As well start. Some of the folks will be coming in a little late, maybe slow service either on the elevators. Have you discovered the elevators yet? They're kind of slow, so give yourselves an extra 10 minutes to each session tomorrow. But welcome to CALLERLAB. For many of you, the first. Welcome to CALLERLAB. Oh, gracious. What a guy won't do to get a free ad. I've only gotten one sentence in, and I've already had that problem. I don't know. It is on tape. Oh, God. I don't know how many of you looked out the window this morning if you were here by 11 and saw the marathon. Did you see it? The thing that, in watching it, there was such a huge bunch that started out, all together, all packed together right in front of the hotel and going by. And they were all pretty well in one bunch. And, not very long after that, maybe a half hour or whatever it was, they had rounded Fort McHenry, is that it? Down there where the Star-Spangled Banner was written, and they were coming back, only this time they were in small units or individual runners, and coming back by the hotel again, and the crowds were out there clapping for them. And I thought, how many of those people are doing their own thing in the best way they know how? Some came doggone nearly an hour later, but they still made it. And it was just as great a victory for that person who came late as for the person who came in first. They were not competing truthfully with each other. They were competing with themselves to do the best job they could in the thing they had undertaken. And I admired it, and I thought, what a great feeling each one of them has. We'd like you to meet our little crew up here tonight. It's our pleasure to face you and to tell you a little bit about what's going to happen here at the CALLERLAB convention. And we're in order to say hi, we're each one of us going to take just a sentence or two and add our best wishes. First off, from the San Fernando Valley in California, the wife of a caller, terrific gal in her own right, mother of two, Gail Seastrom.
Bob is not too far off. I am a mother of 27. I'm a den mother and a Little League mother. So that adds up to just about 27. I'd like to welcome all of you here. Each year I look forward to every CALLERLAB convention for a lot of reasons. One of them is a reunion with old friends and the opportunity to make new friends, getting away from my kids for a couple days, things like that. But there are a lot of things I want you to think about as we go through the next few days, and as you move from session to session, as you gather for meals, as you wait for the elevator, the express elevator, I hope you take the opportunity to talk to your fellow callers, to exchange notes, to compare notes, to just talk about your opinions about what's happening, because one of the most important things that happens here at CALLERLAB is the sharing of ideas, and that you all realize that you have the opportunity to share your ideas and to express your opinions, and that you all have a vote. And that what happens here is the direct decision of your participation. And I think that that's one of the things that really impresses me, is that those that come here and have the opportunity to participate really get a chance to make some of the decisions that are going to affect our activity. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity to be involved, and I hope that you all take an advantage of that while you're here.
Thank you, Gail. We are very pleased to have this entire panel because they're from different parts of the country and they represent different viewpoints that all come to the same focus. This next gentleman has been square dancing since his high school days when he and his wife were part of the early Lloyd Shaw Cheyenne Mountain Dancers teams. And we're so pleased that he and Erna still have high interest in square dancing. He's a leader. He's an executive secretary assistant general chairman of CALLERLAB, assistant general secretary. This is his name, Herb Egender.
How about Assistant Executive Secretary? Wouldn't that be closer? It's nice to be with you at Asilomar here, Will. I really appreciate it. If you folks in back feel lonesome, come on down and join the rest of us here. If you're comfortable back there, well, that's fine too. But we got lots of room down front, and we want you to feel a part of the group, certainly. I don't know about how you're going to feel about CALLERLAB, but I always get so pumped up that of being here and the atmosphere and meeting with the other callers and the things that go on. The first CALLERLAB convention was in 1974, and I was thrilled to death that year to receive an invitation to be one of 124 people at that first convention, because I was just a local caller. And for a number of reasons, we decided that Erna couldn't go that year, and she didn't go. And I came home from the convention about 3 feet off the ground and pumped up and everything. She said, "Boy, it's the last time you're going to go without me." And it was the last time. She's been to every convention since then until now. And the day I came here, I put her in the hospital, so she's not with me this year. But I hope you get that feeling, really getting pumped up about what goes on here, and that you enjoy it, and you become a part of it, that you contribute to it, make your voice heard. And one of the things you need to do is get to know each other. Why don't you just stand up and turn around and say hi to the person behind you or next to you, somebody you don't know. Come on, hi there. You all do that, and I'll hug Gail.
Okay.
All right, square your sets. That's one of the nice things about this convention. You meet great people and you make new friends, and you'll have an opportunity to come back to get them. But anyhow, we just want to say welcome to you, welcome aboard, be a part of the convention, and if we can help you in any way, that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Herb. Herb Egender. You've heard these corny statements, and yet not corny in that they have real meaning. Fun, a 3-letter word with you in the middle. And nobody seems to personify the idea of fun and square dancing better than our next representative up here. Old Navy friend, longtime recreational authority, principal of a grade school from Ohio. Let's greet Bob Howell.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you. 'Tis a privilege to be in the great city of Baltimore. This is on tape, and I've got to be very careful. If you'd have heard Mama's last word as she left me at the airport this morning, why, you'll understand why sometimes. No, welcome aboard. I, too, had the privilege of being at that first meeting, and it's lasted all these years. I've yet to miss a meeting and look forward to it every year, and I hope the good Lord will grant me the grace to continue doing so. For I'll be very honest with you, I've learned an enormous amount coming to CALLERLAB. However, I've made more friends and gotten to know more people in the square dance field through this particular activity than any other dance association that I believe to which either my fellows or I belong. And it's a sharing. My big word was going to be share, but that Gail has already stolen my thunder there. And no, what you pump into this thing is what you're going to get out of it. Now, a couple of things. Don't try to do everything on that program. You'll go home just frazzled if you do. Pick out the things that have meaning to you, things that you want to learn. However, broaden your scope a little bit too, and involve yourself in some of the things that may not be familiar to you. You may be calling it one particular program or one particular type of dancing, and it might be just real wise to sit in on a meeting of something that is not your major concern. You may realize that, well, gee, that's not as bad as I thought it was. Maybe I could involve myself there. The real value, I guess I would say, is I find anyhow, between about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night and 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. and I mean this seriously. It's the after hours, the socializing, the Bob uses the term so affectionately, mingleizing, and it's true. This is where I guess my greatest value. I'm a person who doesn't need a lot of sleep, so I can go on very little sleep, and I spend a lot of time sitting and just associating and sharing and learning from others. I do believe that the program is a wonderful program. It has been each year. I've gathered a great deal from it, but I've also, my greatest thrill is meeting with people and talking with people, and many times it's the hours afterwards. We hope that you'll relax, that you've left all your tensions at home, and I mean this seriously. I just came back from Hawaii from a cruise of a week, and that's all they do over there. Hang loose, boy, hang loose, and it kind of makes you nervous when the bus driver and you're trying to make the plane. He says, "Well, we'll be there on Hawaiian time." Well, we made it, but it does make you a little bit anxious. But relax. I think that's the first thing I'd like to advise you, and just enjoy the next 3 days. I'm looking forward to it and hope that you are too. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. You probably have memories just exactly like this when you started calling, but I recall a period of time before World War II, when we were getting interested in square dancing, but we couldn't find very much about it. Libraries had a couple of old books. I think you might have found a copy of Henry Ford's Good Morning. But to try to find calls was a problem. And we had 1 or 2 groups in Los Angeles that were doing folk dancing with a little square dancing tied in. And we had a couple men, older men in the group. One was named Carl Miles, and the other was named Ray Shaw. And these men set a pattern for many of us who were young callers at the time. They shared, and everything that they had was open to us. If we wanted a call, they'd say, "Here's my little black book, go ahead and copy it." And it was because of this spirit of helpfulness, this sharing, this spreading the wealth, that made our area grow. And I've never forgotten how important this communication with our peers, this opportunity to sit down with people we admired so much in the early days and really got to find out that they were human beings, how important that was. In the years after the war, when square dancing began to reach into a boom period and grow like wildfire, and we had so many people starting to dance and so many callers, about 1950, we were asked if we would put on a square dance that would be the largest one ever held at that time in the city of Santa Monica. And we said, "Oh, yeah, we'd be happy to." And they said, "What's the largest square dance ever held?" And we said, "Probably 2,000 in Texas." And they said, "Okay, let's aim for 4,000. Well, in the planning sessions, we had about 150 callers in the area, and our program would allow us to have about 30 calling. So the idea was that all the callers themselves would vote on who the callers would be for those 30 who would be that night. And the thing that was interesting, they all voted, and they came up with 30, but that night at the big dance, where 15,000 showed up, all the callers who were not on the program came and supported. On another occasion, we had 3 or 4 different ways to do different styles of dancing. Some of us would come home, turn the girl under our arm, balance away, come up and do a do-sa-do. That was a standard getting home. Some of us would do an Allemande left in 4 counts and float out on the 4th, then come back in the final 4 for an 8-count Allemande left. Others would do an arm turn. It was with the callers working together in a spirit of cooperation and not competition that helped set the pattern on time for us in an area, and we never forgot it. We always appreciated it. As the years went on, and as square dancing grew in our area and your area, and we got changes coming in the late 50s, and we moved out of memorized calling into a hash, and from there into a sight calling. And from there we got into the situations where people began to compete in their dancing and get into different phases. The callers seemed to pull away a bit. They were doing their own thing. They were sort of suddenly finding themselves working not with each other, but competing. And we noticed that wasn't just in our area, but it was all over the country. The spirit had somehow gone out of a lot of what we were doing. About that time, we had a place at our hall which was called the Hall of Fame. And we had about 12 callers at that time who were members. We decided that maybe this would be a good way to start something. So we invited all 12 callers to come as our guest at a Asilomar and spend a weekend with us between two sessions. And it was from that informal meeting in 1971 at a Asilomar in the Monterey Peninsula that the group decided that it might not be a bad idea to have a group of callers known as CALLERLAB, and starting from just a small group of a dozen of us, see if we couldn't expand and learn more about each other. Because we found that when 12 of us sat down, we began to learn things about each other, that we were indeed human beings and we were looking for the same things. That idea grew, and for the next 2 or 3 years we had small meetings in which we were planning what might come. We had a one-for-one growth period. Each one of the 12 invited one, and then from that each invited one, so that we virtually outgrew our small meeting rooms at Asilomar and decided by, 1974 that we had our first convention? That we had our kickoff then for what was to become an international callers group. And the things that we were striving for, there's probably no way to put them into number of importance, but one thing was to get people within the calling ranks to think like professionals and get an opportunity to meet each other, to work together, and to come up with decisions that would help put us on the right track. And that was the beginning of our convention period. I have a name here. Let me just interrupt long enough because there is an urgent phone call. Bob Schlenker. Are you here, Bob? Okay. From that point of our first convention in 1974, Herb, why don't you carry the ball?
There's no possible way to cover 12 years in just a few minutes of the things that have gone on at CALLERLAB. But I think all of you have the convention handout of direction. Maybe you haven't had a chance to look at it. And as I look at some of the topics together, why, it sort of brings back some memories. 1974 was working together, was our convention theme. And that was the first time where the group had been invited in to, in fact, work together. And we started that year with round-robin sessions, and as I recall, we had 3 different subjects we talked about. How we dance was one, experimental programs was another. I even forget what the third one was. But it was at that time that as a starting point for our programs, we adopted the then current sets and order lists of basics as a place to start. It was there that we started what we called the experimental program that we now know as the quarterly selection program. And a lot of people wonder why that program was started. Haven't we got enough stuff already without foisting new movements on? Those of us that were calling and dancing in the 1960s were driven crazy by the number of experimental movements. I kept count one year of what I could get my hands on of things that were, quote, being invented, of new movements. And I counted over 200 per quarter in 1 year in the 1960s. The result was you'd go to a dance and I might be using a half dozen, Bob would be using a different half dozen, the other Bob would be using a different half a dozen. Nobody knew what they were going to dance or anything, and the thing was just completely out of hand. And so one of our first steps was to try to get this thing under control and do some standardization, to try to standardize our styling, these kinds of things, in 1974. 1975, the theme was time for action. And it was in that year, 1975, that we started our accreditation program to accredit callers, and I'll talk about that a bit more later on. it was either 1974 or 1975 that we were discussing styling, something that we're still discussing, and that's the hands up and hands down position in an ocean wave. And although the discussions were quite serious, the thing I most remember about that particular discussion was in the hotel lobby. And it must have been 1974 because I think it was in St. Louis. Yeah, and it was very, very early in the morning. And in this particular group that were arguing the merits of hands up and hands down, the outstanding individual was Von Parrish. And if you know Von Parrish, he can go bear hunting with a switch. And anyhow, great big old Von was up there on his tippy toes in an ocean wave position, balancing back and forth. And they always save a few rooms for salesmen coming through in a hotel, even during convention time. About that time, this salesman came through with his suitcase to check in the door. And he was sleepy and tired from his trip, and he walked into the lobby, and he looked up, and here was Von on his tippy toes, balancing back and forth. And I wish I could describe the double take that this guy did. You can see himself saying, "Boy, what did I get into here?" You know, the guy's too big to ask, but I really wondered. And so we had some of those. We all of us remember and talk about the tremendous work that went into getting our definitions. Many of you that are new simply get a printed copy and they say, "Here they are." Our mainstream definitions took 6 years and 13 different drafts of those documents, with all of the work that went in between to get an approval of just that first list. And it's still not perfect, but that you can't imagine how many thousands of hours that represented, and how much dedicated work that took on the part of many people, some of whom are here and some of who are not. Do we have another Bob Schlenker again? Oh, he's been found and mummified. Oh, notified. Okay. And so although we were accused sometimes of being list manipulators and pushers, those things had to be done, and took a lot of work. Professional leadership. 1977 I like particularly because it addresses the kind of thing that we would like to say to you. And our motto that year, and really every year, is "You are CALLERLAB." Sure, we have a board of governors and we have an executive committee, but CALLERLAB does not operate if you and I as members and callers don't support what the majority decides. And we may not always like what the majority decides, but we are in a democratic society, and hopefully we can work within that kind of society. Working toward tomorrow, comfortable dancing in the proper spirit, attitude and judgment, quality dancing. In Reno in 1982, CALLERLAB is mainstream, and by that we did not mean that CALLERLAB is not concerned with all programs, because CALLERLAB is, but we tried to indicate there that, listen, where do our dancers come from? They come from classes into the mainstream program, and that we're really interested in working for those dancers. Dancers are prime consideration. Good teaching is far-reaching, and oh boy, is that an understatement. Good teaching is indeed far-reaching. Music, our greatest ally. Dick Ledger's written, as I said in the other section, has written an awfully good piece on music should be the basis of everything that we do. This year, programming for pleasure, and we're going to try to talk about how we program for pleasure and how we can make our programs more pleasurable. And we'd better talk about it because all of our dancers are saying, let's put the fun back in square dancing. Those are just some of the things we've talked about, some of the memories that bring back. During this time in trying to decide how we run our conventions, the decision was made that since we require attendance at our convention once every 3 years for members in the contiguous United States, that then we need to move around a little bit so that the West Coast people didn't always have to run the East Coast or vice versa. So now we alternate our conventions, East Coast, Central, West Coast, and so forth. And so here we are in Baltimore, which is about as east as you can get. Next year we'll be in New Orleans, which is kind of central and a very nice place. The year after that, we'll be back at the MGM Grand in Reno, which is a marvelous convention facility. Well, yeah. And, boy, you just really rattled me now. Then we're going back to Orlando, Florida, on the East Coast. Nashville, Tennessee. We may swap those two. Then we're going to go out to Las Vegas, Nevada, MGM Grand. There she goes again. You're already $10 an hour here. So we try to move around the country. So if you're on the West Coast, every 3 years we're in your neighborhood, and you can come at a little less expense than if you have to come clear across the country. So that's one of the decisions that has been made on our conventions, to try to make it more convenient. But again, no matter where it is, we hope you'll come and enjoy it as much as we all do. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Herb. Thank you, Herb.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to continue sitting here. I'm going to relax a little bit. I want you aware that there's a microphone in the center of the room, and you're going to find this is a completely, you heard the word democratic a little bit ago, it is a totally democratic organization. You folks all carry a vote, well, I should say all dues paying members have a vote, and your vote is as precious as mine. I have but one vote, and when these issues come to the floor, I hope that you will exercise the privilege extended in CALLERLAB. The other thing is this, and I meant to say this in my first remark there in welcoming you, the fact that if you have something or a question you'd like to use, or something that you would like to ask, and you think of it at the moment, don't put it away, don't even write it down. If you'll step up to that microphone in the center of the floor, I may not stop my trend of thought, because at my age I may not get back to it again. But if you will, please, that's your microphone, and we ask you to do this in all meetings, if you will. This meeting, for instance, is being taped. You can purchase this tape later on, and some others that had conflicts of various types, or those coming in tomorrow, possibly will want to hear what went on, and will purchase the tape, or the tape service. Would you please, as you go to the microphone at any time, simply address the chairman, or address the person who is conducting the meeting, and give your name and your area. And I'd like to interject a thought there, please. I have found personally over the past, 12, 14 years, I don't know how many years we've been going, I can't remember. It's been a long time. But the one thing I noticed we've kind of gotten away from that occurred in almost all of the initial meetings. Well, in our area, or in my area, and it was always my area, and it just kind of has simply disappeared. We were all hoping that maybe we could influence all the rest of the world by what we did at home, and really we've just about eliminated that problem. That's one of the accomplishments of CALLERLAB over these years, that I think, as callers, we ask people to listen. We change our calls frequently just to make sure that, you just quickly say circle to the right and see how many people fall on their face, because you can go both directions. And we are so used to going one direction. And generally, I'll say this, I was a school principal for 33 years, and I've been a caller, and both of them are very poor listeners. They are really. You're already anticipating answering a question. So please, we want you to listen. However, we want you part of it. So if you're thinking of something and have a question, a burning question, come to that microphone. If I don't recognize you just at the moment, Bob or someone will recognize you very quickly. Introduce yourself, fire your question, and we don't have all the answers, but we'll do the best we can. Some of the accomplishments, Herb hit upon one, standardization. You can go most anywhere in the world now. You can go to Japan. You can't talk to those people, but you can call for them. As soon as you come off the platform, you can call. If you call in standard good English, Germany. I found out the other day that in Germany, 50% of the callers in Germany now are native Germans. Herb, I don't know whether you knew that or not. It used to be all military, and now half the callers in Germany are native. And I think that's quite a feather in our bonnet. A feather in all of our bonnets. But the standardization has helped. They can understand the terms. As I say, you can't communicate afterwards, but they'll dance to what you call, and they'll understand you very, very well. Of course, they have other problems. I mean, they don't understand some of the pattern that you might put in, but they certainly understand that basic one is called. The guidelines, and I really appreciate Herb getting that into your the comment into your last guideline. That it's not a command at all. They are guides. They are guidelines. And I remember after the very first convention, got back out, and immediately we had, I think, kind of had an agreement that we'd dance hands up. It was in the literature, it was in the pictures, etc. And I, by the way, there's my local area again, hands down. What am I going to do? And got out to Colorado, and one of the fellows that was a CALLERLAB immediately went hands down. He says, I don't like that, and I'm not going to do it. I said, are you going to stay a member of CALLERLAB? He said, that remains to be seen, but I'm not going to conform. And the conformity was rather difficult at first. We don't find that difficult anymore. We found that a standardization in our dance procedure has really helped the square dance picture. Another point was the conflict with the National Committee at one time. There was quite a strife. And CALLERLAB, with its executive committee, meeting with the National Committee, relieved many of the problems, and I think has made for a much better programming for the National Convention. Therefore, that was a real plus for us. I'll close with this remark because I think it's so fitting that some callers believed that when we first organized, we were going to have the most professional organization in the world, even stronger than the American Medical Association or the American Bar Association. And even one person said to me, I hope that someday we'll be in a position where if you do not have the approval or the stamp of CALLERLAB, you won't even be able to call anywhere in this country, in a public building or otherwise. I thank the good Lord it never happened. I did never want to see it happen. However, the guiding aspect, this is not a dictating group. We would certainly hope that you would at least listen out. And most all of you have read the material. That's why you're here, because you're anxious to be a part of it. I hope, and I hope you're coming in enthusiastically, and will leave even more enthusiastic, because enthusiasm is contagious. But the fact that these illusions of grandeur that we had at first have disappeared, and there has been a unanimity of thinking. You wouldn't believe that in some of the meetings, and some of you are in for a real surprise there, I think, too, where there's going to be some pretty doggone voiced people. And if you have feeling about it, step to that microphone and let yourself be heard.
Yes, you've done that twice now. Get the message. That brings us up to the present, and let's let the present Gail fill us in.
I think we're at the present now. This year, as I'm sure you're aware, the theme is Programming for Pleasure. I hope that when you look over your packet, you will experience pleasure at some of the things that have been programmed for you. Because there are so many varied things to see, and I hope that as you read this and think of all these sessions you want to attend, that you think about how you're going to spend your next 3 days. You can attend them together if you're with your partner, and if there's things that spark your own individual interest, please feel free to separate and attend different sessions separately and get back together and compare notes. Something you also want to keep in mind is that most of the sessions will be taped. And if you can't make it to a session that's important to you, please buy the tape and you can listen to it again at a later date. Or if it's one that you already attended, you can listen to it again and again and again and again, as my husband does ad nauseum sometimes. But I want you to know that you should be able to just peruse this packet, and please pick your sessions very carefully, but attend as many as you want to, because you are certainly welcome at every session. Our exhibitors are in the convention center, and I hope that if you have the time, you will go over there and visit the different exhibitors' booths. They've taken a lot of time to set up really interesting displays, and it's important that you take the time to visit them if you are interested at all. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about what you might wear, which is kind of silly at this point, because if it's not in your suitcase, it's too late anyway. But we're asking that, you might consider dressing casually and comfortably for the daytime sessions. The evening banquets on Monday and Tuesday are a little dressier, and you might wish to wear that tie that doesn't have the soup stain on it. That always goes over real big with the ladies. So think about that, and what you have on now is certainly very, very acceptable. However, the ladies sometimes like to dress up a little bit more on Monday and Tuesday. It is a little bit more festive. And I'm done.
You done? Yeah, very well.
Can I come back again?
Please do.
Okay.
You can see we're a formal meeting. I might just mention here, and I'm not sure that I have the the numbers right or even the countries, but just for the heck of it, because so many of us in the United States think that people might not come from other areas. How many are here from Canada tonight? A whole bunch of it. That's wonderful. Did you want the microphone?
For a moment.
Yes, sir.
Randy West from Canada, Montreal area. Since we are an international association of callers, when is CALLERLAB going to arrange a convention in Canada? At the present moment, the American dollar would give you $1.36 Canadian. It costs us $1.40 to buy an American dollar this time coming down. Come on up, it's cheap.
Great. That'd be nice. Can we bring that up at the board meeting? It's been brought up. I think it'd be a great idea. And what city are you in so we can all stay at your house? Oh, thank you. That's great. Yes, Herb.
It's been discussed at the board meeting many times, and I think as far as the board is concerned, they're very amenable to the suggestion. It's simply that your customs people do not agree. It's very difficult. Our exhibitors, for example, could not come with us because of the very stringent customs kinds of things. I was just there last weekend. I had to pay $50 for a work permit to do a clinic up there, and it's sometimes it's not that all easy. Doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it again, and we appreciate the invitation and your suggestion. But it has been discussed many times, and the difficulty in crossing the border right now makes it a tough proposition. But thank you for mentioning it.
Thank you, Herb. Those of you who have danced in Canada know that you just can't beat the dancing or fun or friendliness of our Canadian neighbors. And they have in Calgary this summer, is it in August, early August, they have their 5th Canadian National Convention? Something like that. I could be off a little bit. Let's just hit Germany. Do we have a couple of Germany representatives? They're at other meetings probably. Oh, right down here. Great. And I think in the reception line I met at least one from England. Are you here? Way in the back. Great. Hopefully we'll get to know you all by your names. And that's one of the fun things we'll be talking about at mealtime, is one of the real great times to get to know each other. Australia. There you are. Stand up. Great. Got one of those Aussie hats? You have some awfully good commercials on television. New Zealand. Yeah, we do have some New Zealanders. I don't know if they're here or not. They may have been here before. What countries other than Texas are we missing? Okay, any other country I'm leaving out that are here? Okay, Gail mentioned a few minutes ago tapes. Some of these sessions are being taped. You look in your program and you see an asterisk before the number. She may have mentioned that, and that tells you what is being taped, and that will help you decide what to go to and what to miss in the event two are vying for your attention. This next 3 days are solution-oriented meetings. Now, sometimes we get impatient. We say we should come into one of these sessions at the end of 3 days, go home with the bottom line, everything resolved. It doesn't work quite that well, or quite that quickly. It works well, but it does take time in a democratic process to come out with answers that everybody has a good input on. And you're going to find that you're going to have plenty of opportunity to input to a lot of these sessions. Remember, programming for pleasure isn't necessarily your pleasure. It's the pleasure and the joy and the fun and the friendliness of those for whom you are fortunate enough to call and teach. Keep that in mind. Herb, you can have another crack at this if you'd like to talk about schedule. Why not? What the heck?
Gail touched upon this, and the question always comes, my gosh, look at this schedule. What do I do? There are 3 things I'd like to go to at the same time. And that's going to be true. You're going to have some conflicts. essentially, there are three kinds of schedule things that we deal with at these conventions. There are those where we will all be scheduled to be in the same room. And we'll meet those tomorrow morning, where we have the opening session. We'll introduce some people. We'll try to get ratification of some changes to our bylaws, conduct some preliminary business, those kinds of things, just as an opening session. And then we'll all be treated to a debate, which ought to be a humdinger. And we'll all get to listen to that. So there are those kinds of group things where we'll all be scheduled. The other two kinds of things we have, one could be termed an interest session or an educational session. And this might be a session on choreography, it might be a session on teaching, a session on leadership, a clinic kind of educational thing where you can go in and perhaps learn something. And in those sessions you're going to find a moderator and a panel, and they will be making a presentation to you much as we are here, and then we'll get feedback from you. The third kind of thing you'll run into are committee meetings. And they are just exactly what the word says. They are meetings of various committees. And those committees will be discussing styling changes, list changes, program changes, these kinds of things. And some of them are kind of mundane. But you might have a particular interest in a committee. And you're saying, gee, I'm just a brand new person here. Can I go in there? And the answer is yes. And you say, can I be on that committee? And the answer is yes. If you're interested in what that committee is doing, you want to be a part of that committee work, for heaven's sakes, let us know about it. We'd love to have you. But don't do it just because you think it might be fun. If you're not going to communicate, if you're not going to answer your correspondence, if you're not going to be a working member of the committee, don't tell us about it. That one of our big problems is communication. Gail said if you want to go with your partner, go with your partner. I would heartily recommend that you split up. One of you go to one session and one of you go to another session, and then compare notes. And it's like the bubble. It's like the gum advertisements. You double your pleasure, double your fun. That way, and you cover a lot more ground. But don't be bashful in any of the sessions. You weren't invited to come here and just sit and listen. Get your input, and if you're interested in what a committee is doing, go to that committee session and become a part of the convention.
Thank you, Herb. We've talked about many different facets of the sessions, and we're going to try now to sort of pick up the pieces of things that we may not yet have talked about. In a minute, you're going to listen to Gail talk about a portion that she is heading this year. It's going to be particularly interesting to those of you who are partners of the callers. But first of all, Bob, why don't you round some of this together?
Thank you, Bob. Yes, some of the, I think the most interesting sessions that I've been able to attend in the past, caller training. What about square dancing in schools? Very close to my heart. Very close to my heart. Being a schoolman as long as I was. How much the carryover is, I know I shouldn't say that either. Many of you are calling to adult groups. You're calling club level, etc. How about expanding yourself just a little bit and doing something in a school program? Do kids frighten you? Don't let them do so. They're more afraid of you than you are of them, I hope. But these various facets of the types of programs that are being offered, Bob, I think, made the point that I had written down here, wanted to stress so emphatically, or Herb did, split up. Don't both of you go to the same session, because you can involve yourself in twice as many of the meetings by splitting up, by you going to one and your partner going to the other. Taking part in those meetings, too. You may have some strong feeling. I hope you do, if you've brought some feeling with you. As Bob used the comment before, too, about being solution-oriented. You may have a real chip on your shoulder. All right, let's get it out. I tell you what, don't let it fester, because the most tiring day you'll ever live in your whole life is one where you carry a grudge for the whole doggone day. Just get rid of it. We've seen them come, we've seen them go, and I'm sure that there are people that have left this organization through...
You grow. Well, you grow by discussing and looking at the alternatives. As a school principal, boy, I had that in the back of my mind all the time. If something bottles up, what other direction may I travel? I'd like to, if I may, just for a moment, hit about meals. Would you please, don't any of you save seats. It creates a real problem for us. If you're going in and you tilt the chairs up or put your purse or your books on a table and trying to save seats, if you want to break bread with somebody, please make arrangements beforehand and meet them outside in the foyer, outside in the lobby, before you get into the dining room itself. Particularly at dinner time, this is the worst part because there'll be receiving lines, etc. There'll be certain protocol, and if you get in there and try to meet people or wait for people, you'll get the doorway so jammed that no one will move. So please arrange a meeting place beforehand and then go into the dining hall together so that you may sit together at a table. Now, may I also ask this? There's a lot of security in holding hands, as you well know, and eating with people that you do know. But please, would you do one thing, if no, for nobody else, for me? Two things, really. One, I want you to say hi to me, because if you walk by, just say hi, and I'll give you probably, and I learned it, the old hang loose. I've been giving that to my wife all week long, and boy, she's boiling. She never wants to see it again, because every time she gets angry, I go like this, and that doesn't help the situation. But please say hi. The other one is this. Would some of you please break bread with me? This is the best way for me to get to know you, is to spend a meal time eating and being able to converse and discuss things with you. I'd like to know more about you. Many of you have facets of dance that I probably have never even explored, and would like to have that opportunity to hear you out. Last time I was in Australia, what was it, during the war? And I said, the fellow in the next foxhole, I said, did you come here to die? And he said, no, I came here yesterday. No, let's stop right there. Well, that'll cost me a quarter, won't it? But that's all right. I was talking about the German callers. I'll tell you, the last time I danced in Germany, I understood the caller much better than I did in Liverpool. He had a twang there that I had. By halfway through the evening, I quit making mistakes. But no, if you will, say hi and meet outside and break bread with somebody different than meet new friends. One final comment I'd like to make is about our other groups. You're going to meet people here. People will be introduced from Round-a-Lab, from Legacy. I don't know how many of you are even familiar with Legacy. I find people that have seen the word and don't know much about it. I wish you would extend yourselves and find out a little bit about the supporting groups, because, ladies and gentlemen, we are all under one umbrella. And with cooperation, you'll get a lot further than antagonism. And if we can find time to meet these people, greet them, and work along with them, play along with them, coming back to the you and the fun, and I always say the fun and fundamentals, you'll grow through the whole experience. So if you see me anywhere, please do. I see one or two tonight out there now that I have met since arriving in Baltimore. And please, just if nothing more, as you walk by, just give me the old hang loose, or just say hi. I would be most appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Gail.
When you give Bob the hang loose, make sure it's really the hang loose that you give him. Because he'll answer you right back is the problem. We've all spoken about splitting away from each other and attending sessions individually. It's my real hope that when the partners do separate, that they will come to the partners sessions that we are offering this year. The Partners Committee is relatively new in the history of CALLERLAB, and it's just 3 years old, actually. And it evolved from a committee meeting that we had in Philadelphia, I think, that ran about 6 hours. And by that time, the committee was on its way to being a full-fledged committee, and the board gave us their certified stamp of approval, and we've grown a little bit every year. When I say partners, I hope you will forgive me for saying ladies, but 99% of the partners are ladies. That does not mean that there isn't something there for the gentlemen partners. There certainly is. We have a real exciting program. Tomorrow, starting in the afternoon, we are holding panel sessions that will be led by many partners that you know, and they are discussing various things like code address and ethics, identity for oneself, special dances, festivals, publicity, special effects like that. And we have another topic called full-time calling versus part-time calling, how to juggle family, career, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this is real important because we don't try to set ourselves up as authorities, because certainly we are not. We are trying to share the ways that we handle given situations. We are hoping that we will have a lot of response from the partners on the floor. There will be a floor microphone, and I hope that those of you that do attend will really give us some idea how you feel about what we're sharing with you, because it's a sharing process, and we all learn a little bit by sharing. Tuesday, I'm very excited. We have an assertiveness training speaker coming, and this is something that in the last 3 years, when we poll the people, the partners that attend, this is something that they've asked to see year after year after year, and we finally do have a speaker this year, and I've tried to give him a great deal of background regarding square dancing and partnering and what have you, so that he can gear his presentation to the partners and given situations. We're going to do some role playing and things like that, and I think it'll be very interesting. We have put a lot of effort into collecting handouts, various information, some different ideas on publicity, centerpieces. We basically know all this information, but we all know it in a different way. There will be a great deal of material available for you. There is also coffee and tea and soft drinks available, and if nothing else, it's a nice, comfortable room for the partners to come in and kick their shoes off and just be comfortable, because you will be among friends, and I hope to see you all there.
Very nice. Thank you. Herb, we're almost rounding this out, and then we'll have time for any questions, and we'll probably close early.
Heaven forbid. Can callers, partners come to your room?
When I figure that out, I'll give you this.
Well, you know, some of the partners would like to come by and see what their partners are doing, and they're welcome to come, huh? Us guys can come. That's what okay. All righty. I want to talk about 2 or 3 different subjects. One thing we often hear about CALLERLAB is that it's a good old boys organization. And I suspect maybe that comes because the organization did start with a bunch of really good old boys. The guys that have provided leadership in our activity for a long time, the Bob Osgoods, the Bob Van Antwerps, the Lee Helsels, et cetera, et cetera. But the connotation when you hear people say, well, CALLERLAB is a good old boys organization, is that you've got to be a good old boy to get in there and have a vote and so forth. And I don't know how to handle that criticism except perhaps from a personal basis. I had a college professor at one time that was exceptionally good at illustrating his talks with personal experiences. And he used to say, please forgive me for using my personal experience to illustrate this, but it's the only kind I've ever had. And think about that. And so I have to tell you the experience I had with CALLERLAB. I'm a local caller, pretty much, always have been. Proud of the title, as a matter of fact. Some years ago, before, in the early days of CALLERLAB, I was being interviewed by the Board of Governors for a job, and all of these people were sitting around the table, Van Antwerp and Osgood, and one of them was Marshall Flippo. And Marshall, when he sits around the table, has a habit of leaning back on the back legs of the chair, just kind of in balance there. And I was being questioned about my square dance activities, and Marshall said, you don't travel around much in your calling, do you, Herb? I said, no, Marshall, I don't. I try to call it well enough so I don't have to leave town the next morning. Flippo promptly fell over backwards in his chair and lay on the floor laughing. I didn't get the job. Never did figure that. But anyhow, I was infatuated with CALLERLAB. I was proud to be invited to it, and after a couple of years, I thought, gee, I'd like to run for the board against some of these big guys, and I did. I ran for the board, and I didn't make it. And it made me mad, so I ran again.
and I did make it, and I became a member of the Board of Governors, and I became a member of the Executive Committee of the Board of Governors. And I resigned both of those positions when they hired an assistant executive secretary so I could take that job. And I'm just saying that every one of you, after you've served your time 3 years before you can become a member of the board, can be a member of the Board of the Governor. You can be a member of the Executive Committee. You can be chairman if you want to work for it and work your way up there. It's not a good old boys organization. It's your organization. You've got the same vote and the same say as any of those guys that have, quote, big names that might be sitting on the board. And I just wanted to share with you. It's an inclusive, not an exclusive organization, and a democratic one. And I vouch for that personally. I want to talk about a couple of programs that will be of interest to you very briefly. One is accreditation. After you become a member of CALLERLAB, we would like for you to become an accredited caller within a couple of years. And even the callers who are not members of CALLERLAB can become CALLERLAB accredited. The process is not a difficult one. It's explained in detail on the application form, and there's no sense in me reading through this. But you have to get a certain number of points to be accredited, and you can accrue those points on the basis of primary calling skills, specialty skills such as one-night stands, rounds, concerts, and so forth, and on the basis of so many points for experience. And it tells you how those points are gathered. You obtain those points by having somebody sign and attest to the fact that they have personal experience of your qualifications in these areas. And don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of it. Get accredited as soon as you can. I think the only area that is frequently misunderstood on the form is in the area of experience. And in the area of the experience, you get the lowest common denominator. So you have 3 people who sign the form. If one signs for 7 years, one signs for 10 years, and one signs for 3 years, the lowest common denominator is 3 years, and that's what you get credit for. You don't average the 10, 7, and the 3 and divide. It's the lowest common denominator kind of thing. If, in fact, you later on sign one of these forms, do it seriously. Do it seriously. You know, it's the old saying, one who steals my purse steals trash, but one who steals my reputation steals something very valuable. One who steals my signature, or to whom I give my signature too lightly, is getting something very precious. And then in our accreditation program for the callers is based upon our own integrity, and we need to take it seriously. But it's not a difficult program, and we encourage you. And the question is, why get accredited? What good does it do me? Well, I think it's something you can be proud of. If you want a more practical reason, there are some schools around the country where you need some sort of accreditation in order to teach in those schools. Some of those schools will accept this accreditation. So that's a practical reason. Another program we have is the Caller Coach program. And this is to become accredited as a caller coach. It's a bit different program, and it's for people who want that stamp of CALLERLAB approval as a trainer of callers. In order to become an accredited caller coach, you have been an active caller for 10 years. You pay a substantial fee, make application, and you take a very, very difficult written examination. If you pass that written examination, you then apply for your orals, and you are given an oral examination by 2 CALLERLAB caller coach accreditors, who are 2 other caller coaches. That oral examination takes at least a full day, usually 2 days, and it's tough. If you pass that, why then you are awarded accreditation as a CALLERLAB caller coach. Those are our 2 accreditation programs. And there's written material to explain those to you. And again, as you become eligible for any of those programs, we would love to have you be a part of them. They are not exclusive programs. We need more good caller let me talk just a word about a very, very important committee that you will hear a lot about, perhaps already have heard about, and that's the famous ad hoc committee that we've had this past year. And, of course, ad hoc is simply a Latin term that means for the purpose of, or a committee that's formed for a special purpose. Last year it became evident that we were having difficulty with our teaching programs. Every survey that we had indicated that the average class length around the country is about 25 weeks, and we're still advocating 42. And a lot of things were happening about people getting rushed from one program to another, inadequate teaching, too many basics to cover in a short period of time. To address all of the aspects of this very serious problem, a large ad hoc committee was appointed under the leadership of Francis Zeller, and a number of subcommittees were made out of that main committee. Subcommittees on recruiting and retention, the lists, etc. And several hundred people have been working diligently for over a year on that ad hoc committee. The main purpose of our being here this year is to see what the results of that ad hoc committee are and to modify them, change them, add to them, to do something to come out of this convention with some sort of recognition of and hopefully solution to the problems that were handed to that ad hoc committee in terms of how long do we teach, how much do we teach in that length of time, and how can we all make ourselves better teachers to do the job that we need to do.
Thank you. We have a feeling that some of you started pretty early this morning driving or flying, and I think it's going to be a good time to call this meeting to a halt. It's taken 1 hour. We've covered quite a few parts of the program, but you're going to find there's so much more to learn as you go along. We're looking for 365 day per year members, people that don't work solidly on CALLERLAB for that amount of time, but people that always have CALLERLAB in their mind who can come up with ideas and ways to help us grow stronger. Remember, we can accomplish by working together what we could not accomplish by working alone. And it's always kind of a nice thing to say, even though it's been said many times, as an individual, when you're looking forward to accomplishments here in CALLERLAB, if it's to be, it's up to me. I would, rather than have any open session on the mic, because some of you are ready for bed, as the four of us leave, if you have anything you'd like to ask us, buttonhole us. During the coming few days, if you have any questions, don't be afraid to buttonhole any of the CALLERLAB Board of Governor members. You'll meet them